A racist white woman is recovering in the hospital and is assigned a black nurse. When she sees the black nurse, she is enraged. The hospital room was bright with sunlight filtering through the blinds, but the air was heavy with tension. Aaliyah Brooks adjusted her scrubs and took a deep breath before stepping inside. Room 307. She had read the patient file. Bethany Hensley, 52. Recovering from a minor procedure. Routine care. A standard patient. Or so she thought. "Good morning, Mrs. Hensley," Aaliyah said, stepping into the room with a warm smile. "I'm Nurse Brooks. I'll be taking care of you during my shift today. How are you feeling?" Bethany, lounging on the hospital bed with her arms crossed, didn't bother to look at Aaliyah. She was meticulously scrolling through her phone, her manicured nails tapping loudly on the screen. "Another one?" Bethany muttered, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. "Pardon?" Aaliyah asked, her smile faltering slightly. Bethany finally looked up, her gaze traveling over Aaliyah's uniform, then lingering disdainfully on her face. "Another one," she repeated, this time louder, as if Aaliyah were hard of hearing. "Don't they have anyone else here? Someone more experienced?" Aaliyah's stomach clenched, but her expression remained neutral. "I assure you, Mrs. Hensley, I'm fully capable of providing you with excellent care. If there's anything you need, please let me know." Bethany snorted. "Capable? That's not what I've seen so far. The last nurse like you couldn't even figure out how to adjust my IV without me pointing it out. I had to fix it myself." Aaliyah's fingers tightened slightly on the tablet in her hands. "I'll make sure your IV is functioning properly during my rounds," she replied evenly. Bethany's lips curled into a tight, mocking smile. "You'd better. If it's not too much trouble, that is. I know you people can get a little distracted." Aaliyah blinked, momentarily stunned by the brazen comment. But years of training and experience allowed her to regain her composure. "I'll check everything thoroughly," she said, her tone firm but polite. Bethany gave a dismissive wave. "Fine, just don't mess it up. I'm not in the mood to babysit anyone." The tension in the room grew heavier as Aaliyah completed her initial checkup. Bethany continued to mutter under her breath, loud enough for Aaliyah to hear. "Can't believe this place," she murmured, shaking her head. "You'd think with the kind of money I'm paying, I'd get someone who knows what they're doing. Instead, I get—" She stopped short, glancing up to see if Aaliyah was listening. "I get the best care this hospital has to offer," Aaliyah finished for her, looking Bethany in the eye. Bethany's jaw tightened. "We'll see about that." When Aaliyah began checking the IV line, Bethany flinched dramatically, pulling her arm away. "What are you doing?" she snapped. "I'm just checking to make sure the line is secure," Aaliyah replied calmly. "You don't need to touch me so much. Just do your job without hurting me. If that's not too hard for you." Aaliyah drew back her hands. "If you feel any discomfort, please let me know immediately." Bethany scoffed. "Discomfort? Honey, I'm already uncomfortable. I've been uncomfortable since you walked in here." Aaliyah forced herself to take a slow breath. "I'll finish quickly then, so you can rest." Bethany's eyes narrowed. "Rest? Oh, I'll rest, all right. But don't think for a second I won't be keeping an eye on you. One wrong move, and I'll have your job. Understand?" Aaliyah straightened her back and looked directly at Bethany. "I understand, Mrs. Hensley. Let me know if you need anything else." Bethany didn't reply. She simply returned to her phone, muttering under her breath again. "Unbelievable. They'll let anyone in these places now." As Aaliyah stepped out of the room, her hands trembled slightly, but she took a deep breath and steadied herself. She had dealt with patients like this before. She could do it again. But something about Bethany felt different. Like this wasn't going to end with just one bad shift, and in the back of her mind, she knew the worst was yet to come. Aaliyah entered the nurse's station, the tension from Bethany's room still clinging to her. She was jotting notes in her tablet when a voice interrupted her. "Brooks, Director Mitchell needs to see you," a colleague said, leaning over the counter. The look on their face told her it wasn't good news. Aaliyah sighed inwardly, nodded, and made her way to the administrative office. She knew exactly why she was being summoned. The walk felt longer than usual, each step weighed down by anticipation. When she reached the door, she knocked and heard a calm but firm voice on the other side. "Come in," Dr. Aaron Mitchell, the hospital director, looked up from his desk. His suit was pristine, his posture professional but not unfriendly. Next to him sat Bethany Hensley, her expression a mask of feigned indignation. She glanced at Aaliyah with a triumphant smirk that made Aaliyah's stomach churn. "Take a seat, Nurse Brooks," Dr. Mitchell said, gesturing to the chair opposite Bethany. Aaliyah sat down, her expression calm, though she could feel the heat rising under her skin. "Mrs. Hensley has raised some concerns about the care she's received during her stay," Dr. Mitchell began, his tone neutral. "Concerns?" Aaliyah asked, keeping her voice steady. "Could you clarify?" Bethany didn't wait for him to answer. "Oh, I'll clarify," she snapped, her voice dripping with disdain. "This woman, this so-called nurse, has been rough with me since the moment she walked in. She jammed the IV into my arm like she was angry about it, and she left me in pain for hours. Do you know how much I pay for this hospital, Dr. Mitchell? This is unacceptable." Aaliyah inhaled deeply, counting silently before responding. "I inserted the IV carefully, as per standard procedure, and documented that it was secure. I also checked in on Mrs. Hensley at the appropriate intervals." Bethany scoffed. "Oh, of course, you'd say that, covering your tracks. But I was there. I felt it. And you can't tell me you didn't roll your eyes when I asked for adjustments." "I didn't roll my eyes, Mrs. Hensley," Aaliyah said firmly. "I took every concern you raised seriously." Bethany leaned forward, her voice rising. "Don't you dare talk to me like I'm lying. I don't need attitude from you." Dr. Mitchell raised a hand to calm her. "Mrs. Hensley, let's keep this civil." "Civil? Civil?" Bethany's laugh was sharp and bitter. "I'm the one being mistreated here. I shouldn't have to deal with this kind of behavior." "Not from her." Aaliyah folded her hands in her lap, her knuckles white from the tension. "I've acted professionally throughout my shifts, Dr. Mitchell. If there's been any misunderstanding, I'm happy to address it." Bethany pointed a manicured finger at her. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Acting all professional while you're clearly giving me the bare minimum. I see what's happening here." Aaliyah's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Dr. Mitchell cleared his throat. "Mrs. Hensley, I've reviewed Nurse Brooks's record. She's one of our most experienced and capable staff members. That being said, we take all patient complaints seriously. Nurse Brooks, I'll need you to ensure there's no further miscommunication moving forward." Aaliyah nodded. "Understood, Dr. Mitchell. I'll continue to document everything thoroughly." Bethany glared at her. "You'd better, because if I see one more mistake, I'll be speaking to my lawyer. Do you hear me?" Aaliyah met Bethany's gaze, her voice calm but unyielding. "I hear you, Mrs. Hensley. I'll make sure your care meets the highest standards." Bethany snorted. "We'll see about that." Dr. Mitchell stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "Thank you, Nurse Brooks. You're dismissed." Aaliyah stood, nodded politely to Dr. Mitchell, and left the room without sparing Bethany another glance. As she walked back to the nurse's station, she could still hear Bethany's voice echoing in her head. "This is only the beginning," Aaliyah thought grimly. She knew Bethany wasn't going to stop, and she wasn't sure how long she could keep her own composure. Aaliyah's next shift started quietly enough, though the memory of Bethany's accusations loomed over her. She prepared herself mentally, knowing the woman would be waiting with more complaints. As she approached Bethany's room, the sharp, grating voice carried through the closed door. "Where is she? I've been waiting for hours." Bethany's voice echoed down the hallway, even though it had been only 30 minutes since Aaliyah's last check-in. Aaliyah pushed open the door, clipboard in hand. "Good morning, Mrs. Hensley. I'm here for your routine vitals check." Bethany didn't acknowledge the greeting. "Took you long enough. I could have keeled over waiting for you, but I suppose that wouldn't matter much to you, would it? Your vitals were checked just half an hour ago," Aaliyah said evenly, moving to the monitor by the bed. "But I'm happy to ensure everything is in order again." Bethany's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a sneer. "Oh, how thoughtful. You're just doing this to cover yourself. I know your type. Pretend to care, but really, you don't give a damn." Aaliyah paused, standing straighter. "Mrs. Hensley, I take the care of every patient seriously. That's why I'm here, again, to make sure you're comfortable." Comfortable? Bethany laughed bitterly. Oh, please. You've been nothing but rough and dismissive since you walked in here. I asked you to fix my IV hours ago, and now my arm feels worse than ever. Did you even go to nursing school? Aaliyah tightened her grip on her clipboard, feeling heat rise in her chest, but kept her voice calm. I assure you, Mrs. Hensley, I did. And I've been a registered nurse for 6 years. If your IV is causing discomfort, I'll check it now. Bethany crossed her arms, glaring. You'd better check it, and do it right this time. I swear, if I have to deal with another mistake, I'll… Aaliyah gently adjusted the IV, her practiced hands working efficiently. Bethany flinched dramatically, yanking her arm away. Ouch! You're hurting me! She shouted, her voice loud enough to echo through the hallway. Aaliyah froze, her hands still. Mrs. Hensley, I barely touched the line. I assure you… Bethany jabbed a finger toward her. Don't you dare tell me what I felt. I'm the patient here, not you. Do you think you can just brush me off because no one will believe me? Aaliyah's patience began to wear thin. Mrs. Hensley, I'm not brushing you off. I'm trying to ensure your IV is functioning properly and that you're comfortable. Comfortable? That's rich, Bethany spat. You're just trying to cover your tracks after messing it up in the first place. Do you think I'm stupid? Aaliyah met Bethany's glare. I don't think you're stupid. I think you're in pain and frustrated. But accusing me of not doing my job correctly doesn't help either of us. Bethany gasped, clutching her chest as though Aaliyah had struck her. How dare you talk to me like that? Is this how you treat all your patients? Or just me? Aaliyah inhaled slowly, trying to calm the simmering anger. I treat all my patients with the same level of care and respect. But I need the same respect in return, Mrs. Hensley. Respect? Bethany's laugh was cold and mocking. You want respect from me? You haven't earned it. You people think you can just show up, act like you're in charge, and expect us to bow down to you. Well, not me. Aaliyah felt her chest tighten at the blatant racism, but she held her ground. Mrs. Hensley, I'm here to care for you, not to argue. If you're uncomfortable with my care, you're welcome to bring it up with the director. Oh, don't worry, I already have, Bethany snapped. And don't think for a second I won't take this higher. I'll have your job. And when I'm done, you'll wish you never stepped into my room. Aaliyah took a step back, steadying her breath. I'll make a note of your concerns, Mrs. Hensley. If there's nothing else, I'll step out so you can rest. Rest? Oh, I'll rest, all right. But don't think I'm done with you, Bethany hissed. Not by a long shot. The words followed Aaliyah as she left the room, her hands trembling slightly as she walked down the hall. She didn't notice the security officer standing nearby until he stepped into her path. You okay? He asked quietly, his calm eyes scanning her face. Aaliyah nodded tightly. I'm fine. Just another day. But as she returned to the nurse's station, she let out a long, shaky breath. Bethany wasn't just an unpleasant patient. She was someone determined to destroy her reputation. And Aaliyah wasn't sure how much longer she could hold her composure. The hospital's administrative office was quiet, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Aaliyah sat across from Dr. Aaron Mitchell, who leaned forward on his desk, his fingers steepled. His expression was neutral, but the tension in the room was palpable. I've received another formal complaint from Mrs. Hensley, he began, glancing down at the file in front of him. Aaliyah straightened in her seat. I expected as much, Dr. Mitchell. She's been vocal about her dissatisfaction, Dr. Mitchell sighed, removing his glasses and rubbing his temples. She's accusing you of mishandling her IV, being rough during routine checks, and speaking to her in a manner she finds unprofessional. Aaliyah met his gaze evenly. I can assure you, Dr. Mitchell, I've followed all protocols and documented every interaction thoroughly. Her IV was secure, and I adjusted it per her request. As for my tone, I've been nothing but respectful, despite her challenging behavior. Before Dr. Mitchell could respond, the door opened and Bethany Hensley stormed in unannounced, her face twisted in indignation. I'm sorry, Dr. Mitchell, the secretary said, following behind her, flustered. She insisted on— "It's fine," Dr. Mitchell interrupted, raising a hand to dismiss the secretary. "Mrs. Hensley, please, have a seat." Bethany ignored the chair entirely, opting to stand, her arms crossed. "I don't need to sit. I need action. This nurse," she jabbed a finger in Aaliyah's direction, "is a menace. She has no business working in a place like this. I'm telling you, if something isn't done, I'll be calling my lawyer." Dr. Mitchell's expression remained calm. "Mrs. Hensley, I understand your concerns, and I assure you we take all complaints seriously. However, I've reviewed Nurse Brooks's record, and—" Bethany cut him off, slamming a hand on his desk. "I don't care about her record. I care about how she's treating me. My arm is bruised, my IV hurts, and she speaks to me like I'm some sort of idiot. Do you have any idea how much I've paid this hospital? I deserve better than this." Aaliyah finally spoke, her voice steady but firm. "Mrs. Hensley, I've provided you with the same level of care I give to all my patients. I've gone out of my way to address every concern you've raised, even when they were unfounded." Bethany turned on her, her face reddening. "Unfounded? Are you calling me a liar now? How dare you? You think you can get away with this because no one's watching?" Aaliyah's hands clenched in her lap. "I document every procedure and interaction. My notes are clear, and my actions are transparent. I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to care for you." Bethany's laugh was sharp and mocking. "Care for me? Is that what you call it? You're just biding your time, waiting for me to slip up so you can say, 'I told you so.' I've seen your kind before. So smug. So self-righteous." "Mrs. Hensley, enough," Dr. Mitchell interjected, his voice finally rising just enough to command attention. "We're here to discuss solutions, not trade accusations. Nurse Brooks has provided a detailed account of her care, and there's no evidence of negligence." Bethany's mouth fell open. "So you're taking her side after everything I've told you?" Dr. Mitchell leaned back in his chair, his tone measured. "I'm not taking sides. I'm addressing the facts. If you have evidence of any wrongdoing, I'm happy to review it. Otherwise, I recommend we all focus on ensuring your recovery." Bethany's face twisted with anger, but she said nothing, her glare darting between Dr. Mitchell and Aaliyah. Finally, she spat. "This isn't over. I'm not leaving this alone." Without another word, she turned and stormed out of the office, the door slamming behind her. Dr. Mitchell exhaled and adjusted his glasses. "Aaliyah, I'm sorry you've had to deal with this. I know it's not easy." "It's part of the job," Aaliyah replied, though her voice betrayed the exhaustion she felt. He nodded. "Unfortunately, we're in a position where patient complaints, even baseless ones, have to be addressed carefully. I trust your professionalism, but please continue documenting everything." "I will," Aaliyah said, standing. "Thank you for your support." As she left the office, her shoulders heavy with the weight of the encounter, she found herself wondering how long she could keep handling Bethany's relentless attacks. One thing was clear, this was far from over. Aaliyah entered Bethany's room with her usual clipboard in hand. She had rehearsed the conversation in her head on the walk over, determined to stay professional no matter what Bethany said or did. But the moment she opened the door, Bethany's voice lashed out, sharp and venomous. "Well, if it isn't Florence Nightingale herself," Bethany sneered, her tone dripping with mockery. "Back to play nurse, are you?" "Good afternoon, Mrs. Hensley," Aaliyah said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm here to check your vitals and ensure your IV is functioning properly." Bethany sat up straighter in the bed, her lips curling into a disdainful smile. "Oh, I'm sure you are, because that's what you people are good at, isn't it? Cleaning up messes and doing what you're told. Not much else." Aaliyah froze for a moment, stunned by the blatant insult. She had heard whispers, condescending tones, and dismissive remarks from Bethany before, but this was different. This was direct, unfiltered hatred. She forced herself to move, approaching the monitor to begin her checks. "I'm here to ensure your care is of the highest quality, Mrs. Hensley," Aaliyah said, her voice tight. "If you're experiencing any issues, I'd be happy to address them. Bethany snorted. Oh, please, don't act like you're some hero. You're just here because someone needed to fill a diversity quota. Aaliyah stopped what she was doing, turning slowly to face Bethany. Excuse me? Bethany's smile widened, sensing she'd hit a nerve. You heard me. Don't pretend you got this job because you're qualified. We both know better. But I suppose that's how the world works now. Handouts for people like you. Aaliyah's hands clenched around the clipboard, her knuckles white. She took a deep breath, but instead of calming her, it only seemed to stoke the fire burning in her chest. That's enough, Mrs. Hensley, Aaliyah said, her voice sharp now. You've been rude, dismissive, and disrespectful since the moment I stepped into this room. I've done everything I can to ensure your care is exemplary, despite your constant hostility. But I will not stand here and listen to blatant racism. Bethany's eyes widened in mock surprise. Racism? Oh, don't you start with that nonsense. Isn't that what your kind always falls back on? Poor me. I'm a victim. It's pathetic. Aaliyah's composure cracked, and the words spilled out before she could stop them. You think you can treat me like this because you're lying in that bed? Because you think your money or your entitlement gives you power over me? Let me tell you something, Mrs. Hensley. I worked hard to be here. I've earned my place in this hospital. And your ignorant, hateful attitude doesn't scare me. Bethany's mouth fell open, and for a moment she seemed at a loss for words. But then her face twisted in anger. How dare you speak to me like that? Do you know who I am? Do you know what I could do to you? Aaliyah stepped closer, her voice rising. Do you know who I am? I'm the nurse who's been taking care of you. Despite your endless complaints and insults, I'm the one who's been making sure you're comfortable, while you accuse me of things I haven't done. And frankly, I'm done letting you talk to me like I'm beneath you. Bethany's face turned red, and her hands balled into fists on the bedsheets. You're done? You're done? You don't get to decide when you're done. I'll have your job for this. I'll make sure you never work in a hospital again. Go ahead, Aaliyah shot back. File another complaint. Call the director. Call whoever you want. But just know this. Every word you say is a reflection of who you are, not who I am. And believe me, Mrs. Hensley, you're not fooling anyone, Bethany gasped, clutching her chest dramatically. This is abuse. This is harassment. Someone get me the director. Get security. This woman is out of control. Aaliyah didn't flinch. She stood her ground, her chest heaving with the effort it took to rein in her emotions. You can call it whatever you want, but the truth is, you've been trying to tear me down since the moment I walked into this room, and I've had enough. At that moment, the door opened, and the hospital's security officer stepped inside, his face a mix of confusion and concern. What's going on here? He asked, looking between the two women. Bethany pointed a shaking finger at Aaliyah. This nurse is attacking me. She's unhinged. I want her removed immediately. The officer turned to Aaliyah, his brow furrowed. Is that true? Aaliyah straightened, forcing herself to regain her composure. I've done nothing but stand up for myself. Mrs. Hensley has been verbally abusive and made repeated racist remarks. I won't tolerate it anymore. The officer hesitated, clearly unsure of how to handle the situation. I think we all need to take a moment to calm down. Bethany slammed her hand on the bed. Calm down. I will not calm down. This woman needs to be fired. Do you hear me? Fired! The commotion had drawn the attention of several staff members who now stood in the hallway, peering into the room with wide eyes. Aaliyah's colleague stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. Come on, Aaliyah, they said softly. Let's step outside for a minute. Aaliyah hesitated, her eyes still locked on Bethany's furious face. Finally, she turned and walked out of the room, her colleague guiding her down the hall. As soon as they were out of earshot, Aaliyah let out a shaky breath. I couldn't take it anymore, she said, her voice trembling. I know, her colleague replied gently. But you did the right thing by standing up for yourself. Let the administration handle her now. But as Aaliyah leaned against the wall, her heart still racing, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next day began like any other for Aaliyah. She had spent the morning attending to patients, trying to focus on her work and shake off the memory of her confrontation with Bethany. But just as her shift was settling into a rhythm, the hospital's intercom crackled to life. "Nurse Brooks, please report to the administrative office." Aaliyah's stomach dropped. She wiped her hands on her scrubs, took a deep breath, and made her way to Dr. Mitchell's office. When she arrived, she was greeted by an unwelcome sight. Bethany Hensley sitting smugly in a chair, flanked by a sharp-suited man holding a leather briefcase. Dr. Mitchell stood behind his desk, his face unreadable. "Come in, Nurse Brooks," Dr. Mitchell said, gesturing to the empty chair opposite Bethany and her lawyer. "We need to discuss a matter of some urgency." Aaliyah nodded and took a seat, keeping her back straight, and her face calm despite the tension rolling off Bethany in waves. Bethany wasted no time. "This is my attorney, Mr. Jameson," she announced, her voice dripping with self-satisfaction. "He's here to ensure justice is served, since your so-called nurse seems incapable of understanding the concept of professionalism." Aaliyah's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She glanced at Dr. Mitchell, who motioned for Bethany's lawyer to proceed. Mr. Jameson opened his briefcase with deliberate precision and pulled out a thick folder. "Mrs. Hensley has retained my services to file a lawsuit against the hospital for negligence, harassment, and emotional distress," he began, his voice smooth and authoritative. "She alleges that Nurse Brooks has repeatedly failed in her duties, caused her physical pain, and subjected her to unprovoked hostility." "Unprovoked hostility?" Aaliyah repeated, her voice calm but incredulous. "Mrs. Hensley has spent days verbally abusing me, making baseless accusations, and even directing overtly racist remarks my way." Mr. Jameson raised an eyebrow. "Mrs. Hensley feels that her concerns were dismissed and that her well-being was compromised. She has the right to express dissatisfaction without being retaliated against." Bethany crossed her arms, her smug expression growing bolder. "See? Even my lawyer understands what you clearly don't." Dr. Mitchell held up a hand, his voice measured. "Let's all remain professional. Mr. Jameson, I've reviewed Mrs. Hensley's medical records and Nurse Brooks' documentation. Thus far, I see no evidence of negligence or misconduct." "Of course you'd say that," Bethany snapped. "You're all just covering for her. But wait until we get to court. I have plenty of evidence." Aaliyah couldn't hold back any longer. "Evidence of what, Mrs. Hensley? That I've provided you with exceptional care despite your constant hostility? That I've documented every interaction to ensure transparency? Or that you've gone out of your way to provoke me at every opportunity?" Bethany's face turned red. "You see, this is exactly the kind of attitude I'm talking about. She thinks she's untouchable." Mr. Jameson cleared his throat. "Let's stay focused on the matter at hand. Mrs. Hensley has photos of her bruised arm from where the IV was placed, as well as witness accounts of the altercation in her room yesterday." Aaliyah's eyes narrowed. "Bruised arm? The IV was placed correctly, and any minor bruising is a normal side effect. As for witnesses, I'm sure they'll corroborate the truth, which is that Mrs. Hensley escalated the situation." Bethany slammed her hand on the table. "Escalated? You were the one who lost control, snapping at me like some—" "Enough," Dr. Mitchell interjected firmly, his tone cutting through the rising tension. "This is a professional setting, and we will conduct ourselves as such." Bethany huffed, sinking back into her chair, but her lawyer remained composed. "Dr. Mitchell, while I respect the hospital's internal findings, we believe a court will see this differently. Mrs. Hensley has suffered greatly during her stay here, and we intend to pursue damages." Dr. Mitchell leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. "Mr. Jameson, we're prepared to defend our staff and our practices. Nurse Brooks's record is exemplary, and her documentation is thorough. If you proceed with legal action, we'll present all relevant evidence, including video footage of the hospital floor, which I believe will provide crucial context. Bethany's smug expression faltered, and she shot her lawyer a questioning look. Video footage? Yes, Dr. Mitchell said, his voice calm but firm. Our security cameras capture audio and video in common areas. I've already reviewed the footage of the incidents Mrs. Hensley mentioned, and it's clear that Nurse Brooks acted professionally at all times. Bethany's lawyer hesitated, flipping through his folder. We weren't aware of video recordings. Dr. Mitchell's tone softened slightly. It's standard policy for patient safety. I'd encourage you to review the footage with your client before proceeding further. Bethany's face turned a deep shade of crimson. This is ridiculous. You're all conspiring against me. I don't care about your stupid videos. I'll take this to the press if I have to. Aaliyah finally spoke, her voice steady and unwavering. Mrs. Hensley, I've done everything in my power to ensure your care was exceptional, even when you made it nearly impossible. I won't apologize for doing my job, and I won't stand for baseless accusations. Bethany opened her mouth to retort, but her lawyer placed a hand on her arm, stopping her. Perhaps it would be wise for us to review the footage before making any decisions, he said, his tone more cautious now. Dr. Mitchell nodded. That would be best. I'm confident the evidence will speak for itself. Bethany glared at Aaliyah, her anger barely contained. This isn't over, she hissed. You'll see. I'll make sure you regret ever crossing me. Aaliyah met her gaze without flinching. I'm not afraid of you, Mrs. Hensley, and I'm done letting you intimidate me. With that, the meeting adjourned, and Bethany stormed out with her lawyer in tow. Dr. Mitchell turned to Aaliyah, his expression softening. You handled yourself well, he said. I know this hasn't been easy. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell, Aaliyah replied, her voice steady despite the exhaustion creeping in. I just want this to be over. It will be, he assured her. The truth always comes out in the end. But as Aaliyah left the office, she couldn't shake the feeling that Bethany wasn't done yet, and that the worst was still to come. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty, save for a few nurses grabbing coffee and a doctor reading a newspaper in the corner. Aaliyah sat alone at a small table, a half-eaten sandwich in front of her, and a notebook filled with handwritten notes by her side. She had spent the past hour jotting down everything she could remember about her interactions with Bethany Hensley, preparing herself for what was bound to be a grueling legal battle. Her thoughts were a chaotic mix of anxiety, frustration, and determination. The confrontation in Dr. Mitchell's office still played on a loop in her mind, Bethany's venomous words echoing louder than the logical reassurances from her colleagues. Aaliyah took a deep breath and looked down at her notes. Every detail, every moment, every word spoken between her and Bethany was written there. She knew the trial would focus not just on facts, but on perception. How Bethany would paint herself as the victim and Aaliyah as the aggressor. As she flipped through her notes, a familiar voice pulled her from her thoughts. Hey! She looked up to see one of her colleagues, a nurse named Carla, standing nearby with a concerned expression. Carla gestured to the empty seat. Mind if I join you? Aaliyah nodded. Sure. Carla sat down, placing her coffee cup on the table. I heard about what's going on with Bethany. How are you holding up? Aaliyah hesitated, then shrugged. Honestly, I'm exhausted. I've been documenting everything, preparing for the trial, but it feels like no matter what I do, she'll find a way to twist it. Carla nodded sympathetically. She's relentless. But you've got the truth on your side. You've always been thorough, and everyone here knows how professional you are. Maybe, Aaliyah said, tracing the edge of her coffee cup with her finger, but that doesn't stop people like her. She's loud, entitled, and she knows how to manipulate a situation to her advantage. Carla leaned forward. Look, Aaliyah, people like Bethany want you to feel small. They thrive on making others doubt themselves. But you're stronger than that. You're smart, you're capable, and you're not alone in this. Aaliyah managed a small smile. Thanks, Carla. I needed to hear that. Carla reached over and gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. You've got this, and if you need anything, you know where to find me. After Carla left, Aaliyah sat quietly for a moment, her mind drifting back to her family. Her mother had called the night before, worried after hearing about the situation. "You've worked so hard to get where you are, Aaliyah," her mother had said. "Don't let this woman take that from you." "I won't," Aaliyah had promised, though her voice had trembled with doubt. Now, sitting in the cafeteria, she felt a renewed sense of determination. She couldn't let Bethany or anyone else define her worth. Later that evening, Aaliyah sat in her small apartment, papers spread out across the coffee table. She had requested copies of the hospital's incident reports, her own documentation, and even excerpts of her performance reviews, all of which painted a picture of her as a meticulous and compassionate nurse. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen. It was a text from Dr. Mitchell. "I've arranged for legal counsel to represent you. They'll meet with you tomorrow to review the case. Stay strong, Aaliyah." She exhaled deeply, grateful for the hospital's support, though the thought of sitting across from lawyers and dissecting every detail of the ordeal made her stomach churn. To prepare, she began rehearsing potential questions aloud, imagining what Bethany's lawyer might ask her in court. "Nurse Brooks, do you deny raising your voice at Mrs. Hensley during her stay?" "No," Aaliyah murmured, her voice firm. "I did raise my voice once, after enduring days of verbal abuse and baseless accusation. It was a moment of frustration, but it did not impact the quality of her care." She paused, thinking of another angle they might take. "Mrs. Hensley claims you caused bruising and pain during routine IV adjustments. How do you respond to these allegations?" Aaliyah straightened in her seat. "Bruising is a common side effect of IV placement, particularly for patients with sensitive skin. I followed all standard procedures and documented each step. At no point did I act negligently." As she continued to rehearse, the weight of the situation began to press down on her. This trial wasn't just about Bethany's accusations. It was about proving her own integrity and professionalism in the face of prejudice and lies. The next morning, Aaliyah met with the hospital's legal counsel, a composed woman named Ms. Carter. They sat in a quiet conference room, the walls lined with legal books and binders. "I've reviewed the reports and footage from the hospital," Ms. Carter said, her tone calm but confident. "The evidence is overwhelmingly in your favor, but that doesn't mean this will be easy. Bethany Hensley is volatile, and her lawyer will use every trick to paint her as the victim." "I'm ready," Aaliyah said, though her hands trembled slightly in her lap. Ms. Carter gave her an encouraging nod. "Good. We'll go through everything step by step. I want you to focus on staying calm, answering questions directly, and letting the facts speak for themselves." For the next 2 hours, they dissected every detail of the case, from Aaliyah's documentation to the security footage that captured Bethany's outbursts. By the end of the meeting, Aaliyah felt drained but prepared. As she walked out of the conference room, Ms. Carter called after her. "Remember, Aaliyah, the truth is on your side. You've done nothing wrong." Aaliyah nodded, her shoulders squared. She was ready to face whatever came next, no matter how loud or entitled Bethany tried to be. The trial wasn't just about defending her actions, it was about standing up for herself and proving she wouldn't be silenced by hate. The courtroom was smaller than Aaliyah expected. Rows of dark wooden benches lined the back, and a single table sat at the front for each party. The judge's bench loomed high above, adding an air of gravitas to the proceedings. The atmosphere was stifling, thick with the weight of what was to come. Aaliyah sat at the defense table next to Ms. Carter, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Across from her, Bethany Hensley was seated beside her attorney, Mr. Jameson. Bethany wore a tailored suit and an expression of practiced indignation, as though she had rehearsed her role as the victim. "All rise," the bailiff announced as the judge entered. Everyone stood as Judge Reynolds, an older man with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, took his seat. "You may be seated," the judge said, his voice firm but even. "We're here to address the case of Hensley versus County General Hospital. Plaintiff alleges negligence and emotional distress caused by the care of Nurse Aaliyah Brooks. Plaintiff, you may begin." Mr. Jameson rose smoothly, buttoning his jacket before addressing the court. Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Bethany Hensley, is here today because of the severe mistreatment she endured during her stay at County General Hospital. This isn't just about a bruised arm or an unpleasant experience. It's about a systemic failure to provide the respect and care every patient deserves. Mrs. Hensley trusted this institution, and that trust was betrayed by Nurse Brooks. As he spoke, Bethany dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, a performance so exaggerated that Aaliyah felt her stomach turn. Jameson continued, "We will prove that Nurse Brooks not only failed in her professional duties, but also subjected my client to undue hostility, leaving her emotionally and physically scarred." Ms. Carter leaned over to Aaliyah and whispered, "Stay calm. We'll dismantle every one of his claims." The first part of the trial focused on Bethany's testimony. She took the stand, glancing at the jury as if pleading for their sympathy. "Mrs. Hensley," Mr. Jameson began, "can you describe your experience with Nurse Brooks during your hospital stay?" Bethany nodded, her voice trembling. "It was awful. From the very first day, she was dismissive and cold. She hurt me when she inserted my IV, and when I told her it was painful, she just ignored me. I felt completely helpless." "And how did Nurse Brooks respond when you voiced your concerns?" Jameson prompted. "She snapped at me," Bethany claimed, her voice rising with emotion. "She treated me like I was a burden, and when I asked for basic care, she acted like I didn't deserve it." Aaliyah's hands clenched under the table. She wanted to leap up and shout the truth, but Ms. Carter placed a steady hand on her arm, a silent reminder to stay composed. Jameson pressed further. "Mrs. Hensley, how did this experience affect you emotionally?" Bethany sniffled dramatically. "I was terrified. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking, what if she hurts me again? I've never felt so vulnerable in my life." When Mr. Jameson finished his questioning, Ms. Carter stood, exuding confidence. "Mrs. Hensley," she began, her tone calm but pointed, "you claim Nurse Brooks ignored your concerns. Can you explain why, despite these claims, your medical records show consistent care and improvement under her watch?" Bethany shifted uncomfortably. She did the bare minimum, just enough to make it look like she was doing her job. "And yet," Ms. Carter continued, "you filed multiple complaints during your stay, none of which were corroborated by other staff or witnesses. How do you explain that?" Bethany's voice faltered. "They were covering for her. Obviously, they didn't want to admit their mistakes." Ms. Carter raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. Let's talk about the incident where you claim Nurse Brooks snapped at you. Security footage shows you shouting at her while she remained professional until you accused her of being unqualified. Would you like me to play that footage for the court?" Bethany's face turned red. I was upset. Anyone would have been upset in my position. Upset enough to make unfounded accusations of racism and demand Nurse Brooks be fired? Ms. Carter asked sharply. Bethany glared at her, but said nothing. Next, Aaliyah took the stand. She sat tall, her voice steady, as Ms. Carter guided her through the questioning. "Nurse Brooks, can you describe your interactions with Mrs. Hensley during her stay?" Ms. Carter asked. Aaliyah nodded. "I provided her with the same level of care I give all my patients. I addressed her concerns promptly, documented every interaction, and followed all hospital protocols." "And how did Mrs. Hensley treat you?" "She was hostile from the beginning," Aaliyah replied. "She made several racially charged remarks and accused me of incompetence without basis. Despite this, I maintained professionalism and continued to provide her with the best care I could." Ms. Carter gestured to the screen where security footage was displayed. "The jury has seen this footage, showing Mrs. Hensley shouting at you. Can you tell us what was happening in that moment?" Aaliyah took a deep breath. "Mrs. Hensley accused me of deliberately hurting her and made degrading comments about my qualifications. I admit I raised my voice once, but only after enduring repeated verbal abuse." Ms. Carter nodded. "Thank you, Nurse Brooks. No further questions." Jameson's cross-examination was sharp, but Aaliyah remained calm. "Nurse Brooks," he said, pacing in front of the stand, "you claim Mrs. Hensley was abusive, but isn't it true that you raised your voice at her? Unprovoked?" "No," Aaliyah replied firmly. "I raised my voice after days of verbal attacks. I'm human, and I was frustrated, but I never neglected my duties." Jameson smirked. "Frustrated enough to let your emotions impact your care?" "Never," Aaliyah said, her voice resolute. "My care was always thorough, and my documentation supports that." By the end of the trial, the evidence was clear. Security footage showed Bethany's outbursts, not Aaliyah's. Medical records proved consistent, high-quality care, and Bethany's own exaggerated testimony unraveled under scrutiny. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Not guilty. Bethany stormed out of the courtroom, her lawyer trailing behind, while Aaliyah sat in stunned silence. Ms. Carter leaned over and whispered, "You did it." As Aaliyah left the courthouse, the weight on her chest lifted. She had faced down lies, prejudice, and hatred, and won. This was more than just a victory in court. It was a triumph over hatred and doubt. She smiled, ready to step forward into a future she had reclaimed for herself. The sound of the hospital's familiar hum surrounded Aaliyah as she walked through the hallways, her steps lighter than they had been in weeks. For the first time in what felt like forever, she could breathe without the weight of Bethany's accusations pressing down on her chest. The trial was over. The verdict delivered. She had won. The truth had triumphed. Colleagues stopped her as she moved between rooms, their congratulations warm and genuine. "You showed so much strength, Aaliyah," one nurse said. "We knew you'd come out on top," added another. Each kind word felt like a salve to wounds she hadn't realized were so deep. Aaliyah smiled, thanking them, but a part of her still hadn't fully processed it all. Later that afternoon, Aaliyah was sitting in the break room, savoring her first uninterrupted moment of peace, when Dr. Mitchell walked in. He was carrying a manila folder, his expression softer than usual. "Aaliyah," he said, taking a seat across from her. "I wanted to speak with you in person." Her heart skipped a beat. "Is everything okay?" He nodded. "More than okay. First, let me say how impressed I was with the way you handled yourself during this entire ordeal. The trial, the accusations, you maintained professionalism and dignity every step of the way. That's not something everyone can do." "Thank you," Aaliyah said quietly, her hands folded in her lap. "It wasn't easy." "I know," Dr. Mitchell replied, his tone serious. "And while the hospital has always supported you, I wanted you to hear it from me directly. You're an asset to this team, and we're lucky to have you." She felt her cheeks warm. "That means a lot, really." He placed the folder on the table and leaned back slightly. "I also thought you might like to know the outcome of Mrs. Hensley's complaints beyond the trial." Aaliyah tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Dr. Mitchell's lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. "Mrs. Hensley's frivolous lawsuit and the behavior she exhibited during her stay didn't go unnoticed by her employer. It seems she held a prominent position in a local company, and word got back to her board of directors about the case. Let's just say they weren't pleased." "She was fired?" Aaliyah asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Dr. Mitchell nodded. "Effective immediately, from what I hear. They didn't want to be associated with someone who made such a public spectacle of herself." Aaliyah blinked, the news sinking in. She felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, vindication, and a touch of poetic justice. "I didn't think it would go that far." "Well, actions have consequences," Dr. Mitchell said. "And speaking of actions and consequences," he slid the folder toward her, "I wanted you to be the first to know. The hospital's board reviewed everything, including your performance under extreme pressure. They've decided to promote you to senior nurse." Aaliyah's eyes widened. "Senior nurse? Me? You've earned it," Dr. Mitchell said simply. "Your leadership, your composure, and your dedication to patient care have been exemplary. This isn't just about recognizing what you've been through. It's about acknowledging who you are as a professional. For a moment, Aaliyah was speechless. She opened the folder, her eyes scanning the formal letter inside. The words promotion and effective immediately standing out like beacons. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't even know what to say," Dr. Mitchell smiled. "Say you'll keep doing what you're doing. We need more people like you in this hospital." That evening, Aaliyah sat in her small apartment, staring out at the city lights. The trial, Bethany's firing, the promotion, it all felt surreal, like a dream she hadn't fully woken from. But as she sipped her tea and reflected on the journey, she felt a profound sense of peace. She thought about the patients she'd helped, the colleagues who had supported her, and the strength she had found within herself. Bethany's attempt to tear her down had only made her stronger, more resolute. The nurse in her heart knew she belonged in this field, not just as a caregiver, but as an example of resilience and integrity. As she set her cup down, her phone buzzed. A text from Carla popped up. "I heard the news. Drinks are on me tomorrow. Senior Nurse Brooks has to celebrate." Aaliyah laughed softly, texting back, "You're on." For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to relax fully. The storm had passed, and she had emerged stronger. The future stretched ahead, bright and full of promise. She was ready to embrace it, one patient, one moment, one victory at a time.